My name is Michael, but everyone calls me Mike. I am 43 years old and have been married to my wife, Rachel, for 15 years. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Illinois, a place where everyone knows each other, and life moves at a comfortable, predictable pace. Our house is a modest but cozy two-story home, complete with a white picket fence and a small garden that Rachel loves to tend. We have 2 children, Emily and Noah. Emily is 12, a bright and cheerful girl who loves to paint and dreams of becoming an artist. Noah, our 10-year-old, is a bundle of energy, always running around with his friends, climbing trees and playing soccer. They are the light of my life, and I have always strived to give them a happy and stable home. Rachel is a stay-at-home mom, having left her job as a graphic designer when Emily was born. She has always been the social butterfly of our family, organizing neighborhood events, volunteering at the kids' school, and keeping our home warm and welcoming. I work as an IT manager at a mid-sized company, which keeps me busy but allows me enough time to be with my family. Our marriage, at least from the outside, seemed perfect. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but we always managed to work things out. Or so I thought. Little did I know that beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form, and the life I cherished was about to be shattered. To anyone looking in, we were the quintessential American family, living the dream in our little slice of suburbia. But dreams can be deceiving, and as I was about to discover, my dream was nothing more than an illusion, a fragile facade that would crumble under the weight of betrayal. It all started about 6 months ago. Rachel's behavior began to change in subtle ways. At first, I brushed it off as stress, or maybe just a phase she was going through. But as time went on, the changes became more pronounced and harder to ignore. Rachel had always been attentive and affectionate, but lately, she seemed distant and preoccupied. She started spending more time on her phone, often smiling at messages, and quickly hiding the screen when I walked into the room. When I asked her about it, she would dismiss my concerns, saying it was just her friends or some neighborhood gossip. I wanted to believe her, so I let it go, telling myself I was being paranoid. Her social calendar, once filled with PTA meetings and book clubs, now included mysterious outings that she was vague about. She would dress up more than usual, putting on makeup and wearing outfits that she hadn't touched in years. "Just catching up with an old friend," she'd say. Or, "I'm helping out with a charity event." Again, I chose to trust her, even though a nagging voice in the back of my mind was growing louder. Our sex life, once vibrant and regular, had dwindled to almost nothing. When I tried to initiate intimacy, she would often turn away, claiming she was too tired or not in the mood. On the rare occasions we did make love, it felt mechanical, devoid of the passion we once shared. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home, my wife a distant, cold figure who seemed to be slipping further away with each passing day. It wasn't just me who noticed the changes. Emily and Noah also picked up on the tension. Emily, wise beyond her years, asked me one evening if everything was okay between Mommy and Daddy. I assured her that it was, but the look of doubt in her eyes was hard to miss. Noah, on the other hand, seemed more withdrawn, sensing that something was wrong, but not knowing how to articulate it. As the weeks turned into months, my suspicions grew. I began to notice little things that didn't add up. Rachel would come home late, her excuses flimsy and inconsistent. She was more secretive, guarding her phone like it held state secrets, and I could see the guilt in her eyes when I asked her where she had been. One Saturday afternoon, while Rachel was out running errands, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I checked her phone while she was in the shower, but she had changed the passcode. This was unusual. Rachel had never been one to hide things from me. I felt a pit forming in my stomach, a growing certainty that something was terribly wrong. Then there was her friend, Jenna. Jenna had been a close friend of Rachel's for years, but lately, their friendship seemed to be taking up more and more of Rachel's time. They would go out for drinks, spend entire weekends together, and Jenna was always the one Rachel was messaging late into the night. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jenna was more than just a friend, but without proof. I was left with only my growing unease and suspicion. I tried to confront Rachel a few times, but each attempt ended in an argument. She accused me of being paranoid and controlling, turning the tables and making me feel guilty for even questioning her. She insisted that I was imagining things, that she was just trying to have a life outside of our marriage, but her explanations were always too vague, too rehearsed. The turning point came one night when Rachel came home particularly late, her clothes disheveled and reeking of alcohol. She stumbled through the door, laughing at some inside joke I wasn't a part of, and I couldn't take it anymore. I demanded to know where she had been, who she was with, but she just brushed me off, muttering something about Jenna and a girls' night out. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, the suspicions that had been gnawing at me for months crystallized into a painful clarity. Rachel was hiding something from me, something that was tearing our family apart, and I knew that I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The days following Rachel's late-night return were a blur of anxiety and determination. I needed to know the truth, and I decided to take matters into my own hands. One evening, I found an old smartphone in the drawer, one we used as a backup for emergencies. I activated it, set it up with a new number, and installed a GPS tracker app. My plan was simple. I would plant the phone in Rachel's car and track her movements. The opportunity came the following Friday. Rachel had mentioned she was going out with Jenna again. As she was getting ready, I quietly slipped the phone under the passenger seat of her car. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her drive away, completely unaware of my actions. Later that evening, I checked the GPS tracker and saw that Rachel had parked at a secluded park on the outskirts of town. My heart raced as I drove to the location, a mix of fear and determination fueling my every move. When I arrived, I parked a safe distance away and began walking toward the area where Rachel's car was located. The park was quiet, the evening air filled with the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. As I approached the area, I saw Rachel's car and another vehicle parked nearby. My pulse quickened, and I moved closer, staying hidden behind the trees and bushes. Then I saw them, Rachel and a man, embracing each other passionately, kissing as if nothing else in the world mattered. My breath caught in my throat, a surge of anger and heartbreak washing over me. I watched as they broke their kiss, and Rachel leaned into the man, whispering something I couldn't hear. The intimacy of the moment, their blatant disregard for everything we had built, was like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't stand it any longer. Driven by a mix of rage and hurt, I stepped out of my hiding place and approached them. "Rachel!" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. They pulled apart, shocked and wide-eyed. The man stepped forward, trying to shield Rachel, but I was already too close. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, my fists clenched at my sides. "Mike, please, this isn't what it looks like," Rachel stammered, her eyes filled with panic. "Isn't it?" I spat, my gaze shifting to the man. "Who are you? What are you doing with my wife?" He tried to speak, but I didn't give him a chance. The fury that had been building inside me for months erupted, and I swung my fist, connecting with his jaw. He staggered back, falling to the ground, and Rachel screamed, rushing to his side. I pulled out my phone, snapping pictures of them together, Rachel kneeling next to him, her face twisted in a mix of fear and guilt. "This is your fault," I said to Rachel, my voice shaking. "You did this to us, to our family." "Mike, please, let's talk about this," she begged. But I was beyond listening. I needed to get away from her, from this betrayal, before I did something I might regret even more. I turned and walked back to my car, ignoring Rachel's pleas for me to stop. My hands shook as I drove home. The images of Rachel and that man burned into my mind. I parked in our driveway, took a deep breath, and looked at the photos I had taken. The evidence was there. Undeniable, irrefutable proof of her infidelity. When Rachel arrived home later that night, she found me sitting in the living room, the photos spread out on the coffee table. She stopped in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. "Mike, please. I can explain," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Explain what?" I snapped. "That you've been lying to me for months? That you've been cheating on me? What could you possibly say to make this right?" She sank into the armchair across from me, tears streaming down her face. "It started as just a friendship," she began, her voice shaking. "But then things got complicated. I was lonely, Mike. You were always working, and I felt abandoned." "Abandoned?" I repeated, incredulous. "I was working to provide for our family, to give us a good life, and this is how you repay me?" Rachel sobbed, her hands covering her face. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I love you, Mike. Please believe me. But I couldn't believe her. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was shattered, replaced by a chasm of betrayal and hurt. I can't do this anymore, Rachel, I said, my voice hollow. I want a divorce. Her sobs grew louder, but I stood my ground. The life I had thought we were building together was over, replaced by a painful, uncertain future. As I walked out of the room, leaving Rachel to her tears, I knew there was no turning back. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw, and all I could do now was try to pick up the pieces and move forward, one painful step at a time. The days after our confrontation were filled with a cold, tense silence. Rachel tried to make amends, but I was too angry, too hurt to listen. I needed to do something, to take control of the situation in a way that would make her feel the same pain she had inflicted on me. And then an idea struck me. If Rachel could betray me with her friend, I could do the same to her. Rachel's best friend, Jessica, was someone I had known for as long as I had known Rachel. She was outgoing, attractive, and always had a bit of a rebellious streak. The idea of using her to get back at Rachel was risky, but I was willing to take that chance. I needed her help to make Rachel feel the same sting of betrayal that I was feeling. I reached out to Jessica, asking if we could meet for coffee. When she agreed, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. I knew I had to play this carefully. Jessica was fiercely loyal to Rachel, but she also had her issues with her. If I could appeal to her sense of justice, and maybe her own lingering frustrations, she might be willing to help. We met at a small cafe in town. Jessica arrived wearing her usual confident smile, but it faded when she saw the seriousness on my face. Mike, what's going on? You sounded urgent. I took a deep breath and told her everything. Rachel's affair, the confrontation in the park, and my plan to get back at her. Jessica listened intently, her expression shifting from shock to anger as I laid out the details. That bitch, she muttered when I finished. I can't believe she did that to you. Neither can I said, my voice tight with emotion. But I need your help, Jess. I want to make her feel what I'm feeling. I want her to know what it's like to be betrayed by someone she trusts. Jessica looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, Mike, I'll help you. What do you need me to do? The plan was simple but effective. Jessica and I would pretend to have an affair, making sure Rachel found out in the most painful way possible. It wouldn't be real. There would be no physical relationship between us, but it would be enough to shatter Rachel's sense of security and make her question everything. Over the next few weeks, Jessica and I meticulously planned our deception. We started by spending more time together, making sure Rachel noticed. We would meet for coffee, go for walks in the park, and even have dinner at each other's houses when Rachel was home. Each time, we made sure to leave subtle clues that Rachel would pick up on. A lipstick stain on my collar, Jessica's perfume lingering on my clothes, whispered conversations that would stop abruptly when Rachel entered the room. Rachel's reaction was immediate and predictable. She became increasingly suspicious and paranoid, her own guilt magnifying her reaction to our supposed affair. She would question me constantly, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and anger. Where were you? She demanded one evening when I came home late from a supposed meeting with Jessica. Out, I replied curtly, refusing to meet her gaze. Does it matter? Her eyes narrowed. With Jessica again, I suppose. I shrugged, feigning indifference. Maybe. The tension between us grew thicker with each passing day. Rachel's paranoia escalated to the point where she started checking my phone, looking for any incriminating evidence. Of course, I had anticipated this and made sure to plant just enough suggestive messages between Jessica and me to keep her suspicions alive. One night, we took it a step further. Jessica and I arranged to meet at a bar downtown, a place where we knew Rachel would see us. I made sure to leave the location open on my phone, knowing Rachel would check it the moment I left the house. Sure enough, not long after I arrived at the bar, Rachel walked in, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on us. Jessica and I were sitting in a booth, our heads close together as we whispered and laughed. When Rachel approached, her face was a mask of rage and betrayal. What the hell is going on here? She shouted, drawing the attention of everyone in the bar. I looked up, feigning surprise. Rachel, what are you doing here? Don't play dumb, Mike, she snapped, her voice trembling. "I knew you were up to something. And you, Jessica, how could you do this to me?" Jessica met her gaze calmly. "Rachel, maybe you should sit down and we can talk about this." "Talk about what?" Rachel's voice was shrill, on the verge of hysteria. "How you two have been sneaking around behind my back." I stood up, facing Rachel. "Maybe you should think about why we're here," I said, my voice low and steady. "Think about what you've done." Rachel's face went white, then red with anger. "You're blaming this on me? You're unbelievable." "Am I?" I took a step closer, my eyes locked on hers. "You've been lying to me, Rachel. Cheating on me with your friend. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" For a moment, Rachel looked like she might explode, but then she deflated, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Neither did I replied, my voice cold. "But here we are." Rachel fled the bar, her sobs echoing in the dimly lit room. I watched her go, a mix of satisfaction and sadness washing over me. Jessica placed a hand on my shoulder, her expression sympathetic. "Are you okay, Mike?" she asked softly. I nodded, though the reality of what we had done was starting to sink in. "I will be," I said. "Thanks for helping me, Jess. I couldn't have done this without you." Jessica gave me a sad smile. "I'm sorry it had to come to this. Rachel, she's changed. But I'm here for you, whatever you need." As I drove home that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hollow victory. Rachel had felt the sting of betrayal, but the satisfaction I had hoped for was tainted by the reality of our crumbling marriage. The trust between us was irreparably broken, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Rachel avoided me for the next few days, the atmosphere in our home thick with tension and unspoken words. She spent most of her time locked in our bedroom, emerging only when necessary. I could hear her crying at night, her sobs muffled by the closed door. Part of me felt guilty for causing her so much pain, but another part of me relished the fact that she was finally experiencing a fraction of what I had felt. One evening, as I was sitting in the living room, Rachel came downstairs, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She stood in the doorway, looking small and defeated. "Mike, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, motioning for her to sit down. She took a seat on the edge of the couch, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I don't know what to say," she began, her voice trembling. "I've made so many mistakes, and I know I've hurt you deeply. I don't know how to fix this." I looked at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything in the world, the woman who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. "Rachel, I don't know if this can be fixed," I said, my voice flat. "What you did, it broke something between us." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I'm so sorry, Mike. I never wanted to hurt you. I was lonely and I made terrible choices." "And what about Jessica?" I asked, my tone harsh. "What you did with her, was that just another terrible choice?" Rachel's face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands, sobbing. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But the pain she had caused me was still too fresh, too raw. "Rachel, I think we need some time apart," I said finally. "I need to figure out if I can ever trust you again." She looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, Mike, don't leave me. I'll do anything to make this right. Just tell me what to do." I shook my head, standing up and walking towards the door. "I don't know, Rachel. Maybe there's nothing you can do. Maybe it's too late." As I left the house, the weight of our broken marriage pressing down on me, I knew that the road ahead would be long and painful. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that I could rebuild my life, piece by painful piece, and find a way to move forward from this nightmare. The decision to divorce Rachel was not an easy one, but it was necessary. The betrayal, the lies, and the heartache had created an insurmountable chasm between us. I reached out to a divorce attorney, Marcia Evans, who came highly recommended for her no-nonsense approach and expertise in family law. We scheduled our first meeting, and I steeled myself for the difficult journey ahead. Marcia's office was located in a sleek, modern building downtown. As I walked through the glass doors, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The receptionist greeted me warmly and led me to Marcia's office, where she sat behind a large mahogany desk, her demeanor calm and professional. "Mike, it's nice to meet you," Marcia said, extending her hand. "Please, have a seat." I took a deep breath and sat down, feeling the weight of the situation settle over me. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Marcia nodded, her expression sympathetic. "Divorce is never easy, but I'm here to help you navigate this process as smoothly as possible. Why don't you start by telling me a bit about your situation?" I recounted everything: Rachel's affair, the confrontation, and the months of deceit that had led to this moment. Marcia listened attentively, taking notes and asking questions when necessary. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, considering my story. "From what you've told me, it seems clear that you have grounds for divorce based on adultery," Marcia said. "We'll need to gather evidence to support your case, but given the details you've provided, I don't foresee any major issues." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief that at least one part of this nightmare seemed straightforward. "What about custody of our children? That's my main concern." Marcia's expression softened. "Custody battles can be challenging, but we'll do everything we can to ensure that the best interests of your children are prioritized. Given Rachel's behavior and the impact it has had on the family, we have a strong case for you to be awarded primary custody." Over the next few weeks, Marcia and I worked diligently to prepare for the legal proceedings. I gathered evidence of Rachel's affair, including the photos I had taken and copies of the incriminating messages. I also documented the changes in Rachel's behavior and how it had affected Emily and Noah. It was a painful process, reliving the betrayal and hurt, but it was necessary to build a solid case. Rachel, meanwhile, had hired her own attorney and was fighting back with a ferocity I hadn't anticipated. She accused me of being controlling and emotionally distant, trying to paint herself as the victim. It was infuriating, but Marcia remained calm and focused, reassuring me that we had the stronger case. The first court hearing was a surreal experience. Rachel and I sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, our lawyers presenting our cases to the judge. It was difficult to listen to Rachel's attorney twist the truth, making it sound as though I was the one who had driven her to infidelity. But Marcia countered each argument with calm precision, presenting our evidence clearly and convincingly. After the hearing, the judge ordered a temporary custody arrangement while the divorce proceedings continued. I was granted primary custody of Emily and Noah, with Rachel receiving supervised visitation. It was a small victory, but it gave me hope that the final outcome would be in our favor. Throughout the process, I focused on providing a stable and loving environment for my children. Emily and Noah were understandably confused and hurt by the changes in our family, but I did my best to reassure them that they were loved and that everything would be okay. We established new routines, spent time together doing activities they enjoyed, and leaned on the support of family and friends. As the weeks turned into months, the legal battle dragged on. There were more hearings, depositions, and countless meetings with Marcia. Each step was exhausting, but I remained determined to see it through. I knew that the end result would be worth the effort, that my children and I would emerge from this ordeal stronger and more resilient. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the day of the final court hearing arrived. Rachel and I sat in the courtroom, our lawyers presenting their closing arguments. I could see the strain on Rachel's face, the toll this process had taken on her. But I couldn't afford to feel sympathy, not after everything that had happened. The judge reviewed the evidence and listened to both sides before delivering the final ruling. In the end, I was awarded primary custody of Emily and Noah, with Rachel receiving limited visitation rights. The division of assets was fair, and I was granted the family home to provide stability for the children. As we left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief and closure wash over me. The legal battle was finally over, and I could focus on rebuilding our lives. Marcia shook my hand, offering words of encouragement and support. "You're going to be okay, Mike," she said. "You've been through a lot, but you have a bright future ahead of you." I thanked her, grateful for her guidance and expertise. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead would still be challenging, but I knew that I had the strength and determination to create a better life for my children and myself. Returning home that evening, I found Emily and Noah waiting for me with anxious expressions. I hugged them both tightly, reassuring them that everything was going to be all right. We spent the evening together, talking and laughing, the weight of the past few months finally lifting. The legal process had been a long and arduous journey, but it was a necessary one. It had taught me the importance of resilience, the value of family, and the strength that comes from facing adversity head-on. As I looked at my children, I knew that we were ready to move forward, to heal, and to embrace the future with open hearts and minds. The divorce was final, and the legal battles were behind us. The dust had settled, and it was time to move forward. Emily and Noah were adjusting well to our new reality, and I focused on creating a stable and loving environment for them. The house, once filled with tension and uncertainty, was becoming a sanctuary of peace and rebuilding. I took time off work to be more present for the kids. We established new routines, which provided them with a sense of security. Mornings were for breakfast together, making sure they started their day with a smile. Evenings were for family dinners, followed by board games, movie nights, or just talking about our day. Weekends were reserved for adventures, trips to the park, hiking, or exploring nearby towns. Despite the challenges, the bond between us grew stronger. Emily, with her artistic flair, began to fill the house with her paintings and drawings. She found solace in her art, and I encouraged her every step of the way. Noah, with his boundless energy, threw himself into soccer. I attended every game, cheering him on from the sidelines. Seeing them thrive brought me immense joy and a renewed sense of purpose. One Saturday morning, as we were having breakfast, Emily looked up from her cereal and said, "Dad, you seem happier now." I smiled at her, appreciating her perceptiveness. "I am, sweetheart. We're starting a new chapter, and I'm excited about it." Noah chimed in, "Do you think we'll ever have a mom again?" The question caught me off guard. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Right now, we're focusing on us. But maybe one day, we'll meet someone special. What's important is that we have each other, and that's enough for now. The kids nodded, satisfied with my answer. Their resilience and optimism were inspiring, and it reminded me to stay positive and open to the possibilities ahead. As time passed, I began to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. The support from my family, friends, and even colleagues was invaluable. They helped me see that life after divorce wasn't an end, but a new beginning. One evening, I received a message from an old friend, Laura. We had lost touch over the years, but she had heard about my situation and reached out. We decided to meet for coffee to catch up. Seeing her again was like a breath of fresh air. We reminisced about old times, shared stories about our lives, and laughed like we hadn't in years. Laura had been through her own share of struggles, and her strength and positivity were infectious. Our friendship rekindled quickly, and soon we were spending more and more time together. She was wonderful with Emily and Noah, and they took to her almost immediately. Her presence brought a new light into our lives, a sense of hope and companionship that had been missing for so long. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch after dinner, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Mike, you've been through so much, but you've come out stronger. It's inspiring to see how dedicated you are to your kids and to rebuilding your life." Her words touched me deeply. I couldn't have done it without the support of everyone around me, including you. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset. I realized that for the first time in a long time, I felt truly content. The pain of Rachel's betrayal was fading, replaced by a sense of peace and possibility. As the months turned into a year, Laura and I grew even closer. What started as a supportive friendship blossomed into something more. She became an integral part of our lives, and her love and kindness filled the void that had been left by the past. One evening, as we were all gathered in the living room, Emily and Noah cuddled up next to us. I knew it was time to take the next step. I looked at Laura, my heart full of gratitude and hope. "Laura," I began, taking her hand, "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want to face it with you. You've brought so much joy into our lives, and I can't imagine our future without you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she smiled. "Mike, I feel the same way. I love you and the kids, and I want to be here for all the moments ahead." Emily and Noah, sensing the significance of the moment, hugged us both tightly. "We love you too, Laura," they said in unison. In that moment, surrounded by the people I loved most, I knew we were finally healing. We had faced the storm and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the future together. Life after Rachel had been a journey of pain, growth, and discovery. It had taught me the importance of resilience, the value of family, and the power of love. As I looked at Laura and my children, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had come a long way, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our new life was just beginning, filled with endless possibilities and the promise of happiness. And as we moved forward, I was reminded that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow.